Cool. So today we're going to tackle how and today we're going to tackle how owning entities is going to engineer discoverability in this future of search. For the past 20 years, we as an industry have focused on optimizing the hell out of pages to rank on a list of 10 blue links, essentially. As you can see on the slide, we've talked about Google specifically here. I guess that's because for most of us, that has been the be all and end all. There's been little flutterings and flirtations with the likes of Bing and Yandex and a few other traditional search engines. But for the most part, we're talking about a Google conversation and optimizing for that Google SERP. Whether it's been keyword opportunities, whether it's been optimizing metadata, building and protecting backlinks, and then concerning ourselves with the technical foundations of our website, they've been the techniques and the tactics that we've relied on and leaned on as SEOs to really win in this game of SEO. We've had to do that because search has always been this idea of strategist or keyword research identifying a query opportunity. We then theorize, hypothesize, and then come out with content that we believe meets the needs of that query. We optimize the hell out of that content, and we try to appear in those key traffic driving positions 1, 2, and 3 on a Google SERP. And that became the game because ultimately search was a retrieval problem. Google would come, they would crawl our page, they would add it to their index, they would then rank that and decide how optimized, how good our content was versus the competitors, versus the other solutions in their index. And they would rank that content and we would be given a position 1 to 99, hoping that we would be in that key traffic driving positions of 1 to 3, or at least on the page 1 of the SERP. If it was on page 2, we would try and optimize and get onto page 1. If it was in 7 to 10, we would then optimize to be in those key traffic driving positions. And the cycle would continue. But in 2026, search doesn't only work like this. There are other sort of strategies, there are other tactics at play that we as search marketers need to be buying into, need to be understanding and ultimately leveraging if we're going to achieve actual search success in 2026, 2027 and beyond. Because we now have a SERP filled with, as you can see on the screen, multiple different touch points or multiple different, disruptors to the 10 blue link search experience. The first is directly on that Google SERP. So we have the AI overview disrupting what 10 blue links means on a SERP. And you can see that ultimately the SERP is being changed by that AI overview presence, dominating what would have historically been page 1, number 1 ranking piece of content. We then have social search. So we have a short video in this case from a TikTok SERP. We're asking the question, what is search everywhere here? And you can see we have that disrupting the SERP. And then we have ChatGPT interactions, and we have Reddit and other forum platforms all entering the space, which means the 10 blue link SERP is actually not the only way that users are going to discover and search and ultimately find our content. And what this means is that a SERP click is no longer guaranteed. You can rank number 1 and still be invisible. And I've got some good examples of that here directly on that Google SERP. So again, we've got the AI overview pushing down that organic listing, pushing down the traditional SERP, if you like, where a number 1 piece of content is now ranking below the answer. So you don't even have to click into that solution to find the answer to the question, what is search everywhere? We've got how to cure a hangover. I'm at Brighton SEO at the moment, so that's an important one on this Friday after last night at the after party. So we're asking, how do we cure this hangover? And instead of having to click through to, I think it's Medicine Plus here, Medline Plus, instead of having to click through to their website to find the solution, the featured snippet is handling that directly on the SERP. Another cool query while we're here in Brighton is where to eat. Well, we have places, we have local listings, we have the find results on featured snippet, all disrupting the previous 10 blue link experience, which means I might not have to click through to a solution to find where I'm going to eat in Brighton. And then in the e-commerce space, we've always had sort of paid listings disrupting us, at least for the last few years especially. But now we have organic product listings, ranking above our key PLPs, PDP experiences, meaning that, again, someone can find a product solution on the SERP without having to go to our website and decide if they like our product over a competitor's. And if we're talking about featured snippets in particular, we can see that according to Ahrefs, 99% of keywords now trigger at least one SERP feature. And they also found that AI overviews appear on at least 21% of searches. In some categories, that can reach as high as 60%. So it's definitely a changing landscape. And what that means is we need to rethink how we think about discoverability. It cannot be a conversation of optimized content to driving key traffic driving positions, because in many cases, those key traffic driving positions are not traffic drivers anymore. And what this means is the SEO industry is no longer facing a ranking problem. That is no longer the challenge facing SEOs. Instead, recognition is the problem that we should be looking to tackle and looking to solve for our brands in the search marketing space. It's no longer a question of what page should rank. It's a question of, are we the most relevant? Who is most relevant to this topic, to this conversation? And can we manufacture content that makes that obvious to Google, to social search platforms, to AI and LLMs, that we are the most relevant? You should include us within the answer. Because the brands that don't do that, they're at risk of fading to nothingness. They're at risk of being invisible within the conversations that they want to earn. So you're probably asking how you become recognized, and we're going to get into it. But really quickly, first, if you've never seen me before, I'm Ashley Liddell. I'm the co-founder at an agency called Deviation, the Search Everywhere agency. And I am the Search Everywhere director there, and basically championing and developing this Search Everywhere framework, this Search Everywhere conversation, recognizing that our game as SEOs is ultimately changing. So let's get back into it. How do you become recognized? Well, one way, and as you guessed by the title of this talk, we was going to get into it, is you can own entities across the search universe. But let's get into what is an entity, because if we don't understand what an entity actually is, we can't then look to own entities. And I think at the minute, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of SEO strategists, SEO gurus trying to own that term of entity and basically nerd out with it a little bit and make it a conversation for very smart people. But actually, if we strip the AI and the LLM focus, if we strip the jargon, we already understand what entities are. To me, an entity is just something you recognize, and it's something that you then associate with something specific. So I've got Jude Bellingham on the screen at the moment. Most people will associate Jude Bellingham with football. That's the first level of entity. The second level is a bit deeper, where football fans will associate Jude with England football or Real Madrid. And then the hardcore football fans will recognize that Jude is the face of football for the entity of Adidas. And talking about Adidas, I've got some other examples on screen. I don't want to spend a long time on this one, but we've got the likes of celebrities and influencers who then collaborate with Adidas to create amazing fashion collections like Molly May. We've got culturally relevant artists and bands that have always been the staple of Adidas since the Run DMC days. And in this example, you can see Oasis, who are going to own that entity of music and culture in Britain and attaching Adidas to that conversation. And the final one I'll touch on is Alessia Russo and her participation in women's football, the growing trend and the growing sort of revolution around women's football. Adidas partner with her to be the face of women's football for Adidas. And these are important because in Adidas's case, and in many cases, you don't become known for something by accident. It is that attachment to those entities, to those conversations, and realizing that you want to participate and own that conversation. So we can use a Molly May example in a little bit more detail here. So we have the brand Adidas and we have the person entity of Molly May. They are then able to collaborate and work together to further and champion the concept of impossible is nothing. So if you follow Molly May on Instagram or if you've seen interviews with her, she's previously spoke about a want and a desire to work with Adidas, and everyone outside of her inner circle basically told her, forget that. That's never going to come. That's never going to happen. But through her belief and through her hard work, one of the most hardworking people I've seen in recent years, to be fair to her, we can see that she's championed that idea of impossible is nothing. And she's basically manifested this Adidas relationship. That's led to the product development of a product entity called the Matcha Sambas. But what's really interesting here is they're double laced. And we'll get into that in a minute. So you see this and you go, okay, well, what an entity isn't is an on-site experience. It's not a page, and it's definitely not a keyword. The best way to summarize an entity, it's just a thing. Now, I told you we'd get back to the double lace sneakers example, and you're probably wondering how we can attach search to these entities, these products, these concepts, these people, or these brands. Well, in the case of the Molly May Matcha Samba, we've got a conversation that has started to develop around this double lace product feature, where searches have started to pop off on the back of Molly May owning the entity through Adidas of double lace sneakers. What we can do in the search space is we can create social search content talking about this trend, talking about this new product, this product innovation, this differentiator, to really start leading that demand generation, and in some cases, demand capitalization conversation around the double lace sneaker, the double lace samba. In other examples, we can create optimized PLPs. We can create optimizations of our PDP to drive the conversation of double lace sneakers. Now, what this isn't is optimization of on-page experiences for the sake of on-page optimizations. What this is recognizing an entity that is important or could be important for Adidas and optimizing our position within that conversation to earn that developing conversation. So we take a step back from that human level understanding of entities and we ask, well, okay, that's how we understand entities. What are the AI and the LLM tools actually looking for? And spoiler alert, they're looking for exactly the same thing. They aren't looking for pages. They want to see relationships between brands and conversations, brands and ideas, brands and entities. And we've got this visual on the back of Google Nano Banana. We can start to see the ways that we're able to manufacture, engineer, demonstrate that. You've got things like people's interactions and conversations with AI and LLM interactions. So if they don't click the little tick button to train and to not train the AI and the LLM on their interactions, then you can guess that ChatGPT, Claude, and all of these other platforms are going to use that within their training data and start to associate, in the example that I've gave so far, Adidas with the example of double lace sneakers. We can then support that with articles, both on our own site and on third-party sites, that discuss the trend, that discuss the ongoing or emerging conversation around a product or a service. That then leads to or can be supported by blog posts on our own platforms. We can then start to use these bubblings of conversation to really drive and engineer Reddit discussions where our brand may be part of ongoing conversations for whatever product or service it is that's important to you. That can then be supported or facilitate creator posts on the likes of TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and other social channels, where we begin to really earn that UGC and that content creator space. Our own social media can begin to contribute, where we're working on a social media strategy to again demonstrate our participation in that conversation, in that entity. That can be supported by wider brand activity, whether that's out of home, whether that's paid, whatever that looks like, where again, the AI and the LLMs begin to associate us with that entity. And then finally, it wouldn't be a deviation talk without talking about social search. We can use our social search experiences. We can use demand capitalization for ongoing queries and conversations, or we can look to generate demand for a conversation using social search tactics. All of those are going to contribute to how AI and LLMs understand our entities that we want to earn. But we can summarize that, and we can summarize that as repeated brand mentions, looking for similar or really aligned associations, and we can make sure that that's taking place across the search universe. This is going to build confidence in our brand, and that's how we're going to win. So we take a step back and we go, all right, AI and LLM, humans alike. We're all thinking about entities in relationships. We're thinking about our brands in terms of their relationship with a conversation, with a thing that's important to us as audiences. And this gives us something that we can use to drive discovery. Because recognition equals confidence. Confidence is going to result in preference, and that preference is what's going to lead to search everywhere success. So, how do you build recognition everywhere? Well, the first caveat is that it's not everywhere. It's everywhere your audience actively spends time. It's just that doesn't sound as good as a concept or as a framework. There's another way, and that's through entity signals. Now here on screen, you can see multiple examples of the signals that we've been given as deviation to AI and LLM that we should earn or at least be part of the conversation around search everywhere optimization. Recognition, and what this shows, is that it can't be a single moment. It's not a single citation. Instead, it's an accumulation of efforts. It's an accumulation of tactics, entity signals over time that are going to allow you to earn a conversation. And when they're leveraged correctly, entity signals can really begin to compound, and that flywheel can start to turn, and we can earn the conversation, we can earn an entity and drive our brand's discoverability as a result. More consistency in the signals that we create, that's going to lead to stronger recognition. Stronger recognition is going to lead to higher confidence and higher preference. And being preferred is how you win in 2026 and beyond. And we've got a way that we can start to build this. We've got a framework, and it's called the entity signal stack. Here's the steps. You have foundation, distribution, authority, and then reinforcement. I'm not going to go into great detail here. I'm going to just go top level whistle stop tour. But if you scan the QR code, there is a blog post. I'll link it in this video's description too, so that you can explore this in more detail. So, foundational signals. If they're weak, everything else is going to collapse. The clue's in the name. Think about your About Us section. Think about your brand description, but not just on your website, everywhere that takes place across socials. If you're represented on a third-party site and you've got a description there, how do you show up there? And then can you align both your About Us and your brand descriptions everywhere they appear with your missions, with your ideologies? Are they aligned across the various platforms that they show up? If they are, you're building strong foundations to then build on the entity signal stack. If not, maybe you should go and focus there first. Here's our examples. So we've got our About Us page on the Deviation website, and then we further support that with FAQs on the various pages within our website experience, for example. The next step is distribution signals. These begin to expand where you exist and how you show up. Think about organic social campaigns. Think about social search content, especially social search demand gen content. And think about how you're working with creators, UGC creators, influencers, and even employees as creators. Here's some examples. So we've got our Substack platform. We've then got Maria creating employee-generated content, discussing social search. And then finally, we've got our own YouTube channel with talks from Brighton SEO from last year being serviced as shorts. The next piece is authority signals. That is where you begin to build on your distribution and really evidence why you should be preferred, why you should be chosen. Here, we're looking to build backlinks. We're looking to build brand mentions. And then building on that, can we make those backlinks, those brand mentions, recommendations? Can we make them endorsements? And then finally, can we leverage review signals to say how fucking good we are at what we do so that people begin to see us as an authority? So here's some examples taken from SEMrush and Spark Toro, again, showing our authority on the search everywhere conversation, where the likes of Rand Fishkin or SEMrush have cited us as the innovators behind search everywhere. Then we have reinforcement signals. So this is really ensuring the stickiness of our brand. It's where we're scaling everything up. Can we build more mentions? Can we build more relationships or work with creators and publishers? Can we then look to build consistent positioning on those platforms through those mentions, where every time someone mentions us or a creator creates a conversation that cites us, that uses our content within their content, is it consistently positioned? Then finally, we have the idea of content cadence. Can we build consistency there? FYI, that's going to look different for every industry and every brand, because ultimately us in the search everywhere conversation that we've used throughout this talk, we can get away with one piece of content a week, maybe two pieces of content a week, because the content velocity in that conversation is low. In the fashion space, for example, where it's a fast-moving entity, a fast-moving conversation, you may need to create more content at scale, at speed, to be able to consistently reinforce, consistently show that authority, consistently scale out and get that amplification of your participation in an entity. So think about what that looks like. Look at what your competitors are doing and make sure that you're showing up more than them, but make sure that it's effective as well. Here's some examples of us doing that, where we've been included in the likes of Matt Kenyon via Backlinker on YouTube videos, but we've also been included in Nikki Lamb from Neil Patel Digital's blogs on Search Engine Land. So what this is a system of signals that can create that flywheel, work together to really engineer the discoverability of our brand. It's going to engineer that recognition, aka it's a search everywhere approach. Now, you can use search everywhere as a bit of an operating system, but your org chart, you really need to start realizing that it's working against you from the get-go, because you've had SEO, social, traditional, digital PR, content, developers, and they've all operated in silos. Recognition, though, it don't fucking work in silos. It's best built through a collaboration and through a supported sort of integrated strategy or approach across all of those teams. And I've got an example of that here. So we've got Shark Ninja. They entered the skincare tech space, and basically they wanted to own the entity of LED face mask. We've got various tactics that they leverage, but before we get into those, what you can see here is they became the biggest brand in the space, attracting 18,100 monthly searches for the Shark brand term, so Shark plus CryoGlow LED face mask. But what they also did, at the time they launched, they shared a shitload of content. They did all of the entity signal stack tactics that we've just discussed, and they grew the conversation. They actually facilitated the growth of the overall entity of LED face masks because of how they were participating in the conversation. So now, not only are they the most sought out brand in the space, but they've also grown that conversation to a really attractive number of 74,000 searches per month for LED face mask. They defined what they wanted to become known for. They proved that they deserved to be the preference, and they showed up exactly where attention and conversation was already evidenced as taking place. And here's the tactics that they leveraged. So they participated in Reddit organically because they had a qualified audience of people through the other tactics that you can see on the screen who wanted to actively go and recommend the product in the conversations taking place on the likes of /beauty on Reddit. They optimized their landing page experiences. So that's when someone was having a ChatGPT chat, their products and their website, their technical foundations were in place so that they could be part of a ChatGPT conversation. They looked to do digital PR. They looked to do product PR with the likes of Good Housekeeping to really build their presence in those publications, demonstrate that authority, demonstrate that relevance, and really own the conversation around LED face masks. And then finally, they developed a search strategy working with creators to either review the product or explain how to use the product so that they were, again, facilitating demand generation, facilitated demand capitalization on the important platforms, social search platforms in this example, where audiences were actively looking for solutions. They turned SEO visibility, that dirty old word, into widespread presence, the thing we should be looking to facilitate in 2026 and beyond. I talked about a flywheel, that entity signal stack that you can see throughout this strategy. It began to turn and it began to gain accelerated speed. And as you can see through this Shark example, this is now already how decisions are being made. This is taking place whether you want to admit it or not. So what should you be looking for when you've done this? Well, facilitate more recommendations. That can be shown up through more brand searches taking place for your brand, and it can definitely be evidenced through more brand plus entity related terms taking place on the platforms that are important to you, whether that is social search for demand gen and demand capitalization, or closer to the point of conversion, maybe it is a Google SERP. Ultimately, it's there to enable that you get chosen sooner. Going to start wrapping this up and leave you, but we've got the idea that I need the SEO industry to realize that search has changed. Discovery has changed with it, and therefore SEO must change with both of those. So if you want to get started on Monday, we've got a bit of a checklist. Pick what you want to be known for. Commit to proving that over time with the entity signal stack. Show up where your audience is already spending time. Really stay consistent, and then repeat this until you become recognized. Then move on to the next entity. AKA, leverage a search everywhere approach. Final reminder, just remember, you can rank number one and lose, because search is no longer a ranking problem, it's a recognition problem. I've been Ashley Liddell. Follow the QR code to find my LinkedIn. I'll see you down the road. And this video will be pasted on YouTube, TikTok, and all of that good stuff. Please feel free to share the video as well.